How do you identify yourself?
An anomaly. An anomaly. I mean, that's how I kind of felt growing up, all the way throughout from elementary school all the way through university. I felt like an anomaly because of that. I just felt so far removed from the overall heritage, and so rooted to just Vancouver as a whole. And there's elements of the heritage that have been sprinkled throughout my life and my childhood for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I identify as a bit of an anomaly. Like, I'm trying now to, I guess, learn more about heritage and think more about the instances in my life, like some of those ones in university, that have kind of shaped thought processes in my life and how I think about things. And I do try and actively now look back at instances and I'm like, like, did I just brush that under the rug? Like, was that a microaggression? Was that racism? Like, should I have, I don't know, should I have been more offended, or should I have just dealt with it the way that I dealt with it? Like, these are things that now I do think about more.
Can I ask you something before we start? Like, why did you decide to be on the pod? Like, even though you cannot, there's nothing I can show. Like, I've got nothing, right? Nothing to show. No videos, no Instagram account, nothing. What made you like, okay, I want to, maybe I should just give it a try. Like, what?
Well, I mean, because I had recently
I knew
started.
I exist. Like,
Well, I know you're a real person. Yeah, I didn't think you were like catfishing me. But because I had recently started my own business back in March, and like, I've worked in the same field.
It's recent.
But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's recent. Like, I've done the work in the same field for a long time, so I have a lot of connections. So I was able to kind of get going quicker than if I had never done that type of field before and started. But it's still harder getting something off the ground that's kind of brand new. So, like, I appreciate support when it's something new for me and a new business venture or something. So, for me, it's kind of the same thing with other people. If there's something new that they're doing and I think it's cool, and they don't have any sure, I'll still,
And you've never done this before. So
so it's new,
It's new for you, it's new for me.
Yeah.
Right.
So less pressure, hopefully, on both of us. On both of us.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just feel I really want to do it. And I'm still learning how to do this, because control my nerves and everything.
Yeah.
It's still challenging.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you remember you were saying like shooting your reels and you don't really feel comfortable, right? It's
used to be.
You're not used to it, right?
I prefer to be behind the scenes, I think, in those instances.
Me too. I'm a behind the scenes.
Yeah. And
person.
I don't know, the camera like staring straight into it and having to speak. I think like in those instances is, I don't know, awkward for me.
And I have this idea, I'm not sure about you, my voice. I think I really don't like my voice.
Yeah.
And when I watch myself like this.
I didn't like mine either. Yeah.
It's so strange, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, but then I talk to other people and everybody kind of says the same thing about themselves. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe if everybody thinks the same thing, then it's not just me. But I feel like everybody probably the first time maybe hates the sound of their own voice or the way that they look or act on camera, unless they are acting, I suppose. But otherwise, I don't think it's like a natural thing.
I don't think so. It's a natural thing.
No.
I kind of like it. I like, and I hope you can feel the same after we're done with the this episode, because I'll talk about that later. Yeah, and I'm probably gonna ask you, how are you feeling by doing this? Because it was something really special for me. Yeah. So can I explain? It's hard to express that, but anyways, yeah.
Nice.
Let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Ready. I think we got everything here. So, okay. Just look at my camera now. I want to make sure I'm looking at my camera today. Welcome to another episode of Yes, I'm Asian podcast. My name is Fabio. I'm your host. And before we actually start, I want to say something. I know that this is it has a really strong personal, purpose. But I truly believe that this podcast can help other people, trying to find a way to connect with your roots. And the more I do this podcast, the more I listen to my guests' stories and unique experiences. The more I feel I'm proud of myself for some reason. So I hope you all can, feel that energy. So today I have a very special guest. Her name is Courtney Lee, right? Is that right?
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, so I'm very happy that you're here today. So I remember, I'm gonna say it again because I thought she's not gonna make it. Is she coming?
Yeah.
I was texting you waiting for the last minute. You're saying, no, I'm not doing today. Something happened, and can we cancel it? So yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, no, she's not doing it.
No, I'm just probably a bad responder over text. But no, if I say I'm going to do something, I definitely always show up unless I'm dying, which hopefully won't happen. But that would be the only reason. But I hate when people flake out on me as well. So I do my best to try not to do that to other people. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll commit. Yeah.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself just a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be on this podcast. I'm honored that you asked me as a guest. So yeah, I'm Courtney Lee, as you said. I've born and raised in Vancouver, lived here pretty much all my life. Only short stints away when I was in university, but it's kind of the same for a lot of people. And I recently started my own venture too. I guess similar to you, I started my own business in recruiting and consulting. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now, and so wanted to take this time and leap of faith to start my own venture. And yeah, so that's relatively new.
Yeah, it's a huge step, right? And then when did you actually made that decision, having your own company?
Good question. I think it's something I've always thought about and wanted to do in the back of my mind for a couple years. Just the idea of kind of working for yourself. I think being, locked inside in COVID as well, it just gave a lot of time to think and perspective. And I was like, what do I want to do? Do I want to be doing the same job at the same company forever, or do I want to make a change, and what does that look like? So for me, I think I'd always known that I was wanting to work for myself and to build something of my own for myself. So it's kind of always been in the back of my mind. And then it just kind of came to fruition March this year, so it's relatively new, my workshop recruiting venture.
So you're co-founder, right?
Yeah, so I do this with my fiance. So he also has a background in sales. So he is doing more of the consulting side. So he does a lot of business development, sales coaching, sales consulting. He's like an outsourced business development person who becomes kind of an embedded arm into different companies. So similar kind of what I do, but I do it in recruitment. So so similar kind of types of work in consulting in a way. And we can partner with companies and kind of give them two different services, which has been kind of nice. So yeah, people always ask me, they're like, oh, you work and live with your partner. Is that annoying? And it's not actually. We get along really well. we work really well together. So yeah, it's actually been kind of fun. It's been nice.
And I remember, like, I've seen your Instagram, your professional, your company's Instagram account is out there.
Yeah.
And I was watching your reels, and I do like the one thing that caught my attention was when you were saying like something about your company has a different approach. What was the meaning of that? Like, what is the main difference of your company?
Yeah. To other companies?
To other companies, yeah.
So I think the difference is that we're boutique now. There's 2 of us, and we want to stay boutique. I think what we like about the services that we're offering now and what we can give our clients is the fact that there is that personal level of attention and service. And I think people appreciate that because our businesses are very people-to-people oriented. And I've worked in big corporate companies for a majority of my corporate career, I guess you could say. And yeah, there was always just some things where, you know, if things went wrong, like there's always different layers of approvals and parameters within which you can work, which kind of puts you at arm's length from a lot of the companies that you're working with. And when you care about your job, you do feel like they're your clients, even if you're working for a company. So I wanted to add in that personal level of service and touch, and I felt like I could only do that if I was doing it on my own terms. In
other words, those big companies, they don't do that.
It's more, well, you feel a little bit more like you're a cog on a wheel. It's not that they don't, like you can, but it's harder when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger because there's more structure as it gets bigger. There's more layers of approval. There's more parameters with which you can and can't work because, you know, people can only control so much when it gets to be so big. So it makes sense. Like that's just naturally what has to happen when it's a big company. It's no fault of anybody's. It's more just some people prefer to work that way and can do really well in climbing the corporate ladder. And I think for me, I liked more of the approach where I'm working more with the clients as opposed to climbing a corporate ladder and being able to focus my attention on that and the level of service that I can give on my own terms as well. So that's been kind of nice.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for answering that.
Yeah.
I was curious, like not part of the main topic here, but yeah, I wanted to ask you that. So can you tell me more about your background? Like, well, what is your background?
Yeah, so I am Chinese by heritage, but my family's roots are from Hong Kong. So I'm 4th generation Canadian. So my parents were born here. My grandparents on my dad's side were born here. On my mom's side, they were born overseas and moved over. And then so on my dad's side, my great-grandparents were the ones that first moved here.
But they were born in Hong Kong.
My great-grandparents on my dad's side, yes. And then they
on your dad's side.
Yeah. So my grandparents, my parents, and me and my sister were all born here.
So being the 4th generation, how do you stay connected to your roots? I think you already asked that. Probably to your, parents.
I mean, on a day-to-day now, I don't think about it as often. But I think what's mainly kept the connection has obviously been through food, honestly. Food's a big part of a lot of different ethnicities and cultures around the world. And so I think that is something that, as a staple, still keeps families together. Like if I go to a Chinese restaurant for dim sum, like with my family, we'll order a lot more of the traditional Cantonese style dishes. Whereas if I were to go with like a group of friends who are from different ethnicities, different parts of the world, we're not probably ordering the same things that I would if I were with my family. So those little pieces definitely keep us tied to our roots. But a lot of what we grew up in terms of culture when I was a kid was more of a westernized approach. Like growing up in elementary school, I think I was the only Asian kid yeah, at all. I think in my
That's
elementary
interesting. Like living in Vancouver, that there's a big Asian community, right? And how come you actually sometimes have, live in a bubble like surrounded by
Yeah.
mostly by white people, right?
Yeah, definitely mostly white people. I was in Deep Cove. So my family moved us to, like my parents moved us to Deep Cove when I was 6. I think I was born and raised up until that time in Burnaby. And then we moved to Deep Cove. And Deep Cove primarily at the time, I think there's a little bit more diversity now, but at the time, definitely primarily white. And the elementary school that I went to was a private Catholic elementary school. So it was kind of newly constructed as I was growing up. And so when I was in classes, like they didn't even have a full like grade of students yet. So
You had the mixed classes, right? That's what they say, right? Grade 3 and 4 and like 2.
No, it
Because
wasn't.
they don't have enough
It wasn't
students.
No, they had enough students. It was just like the school with the first year that it started. I was like maybe the 3rd or 4th year in to the school being started. So if you start a class out in kindergarten, when I started in kindergarten, the only grade that I got up to at that point was grade 4 because the school was so new.
Oh, I get it.
So yeah, so at that point, I don't even remember what year it was, but at that point, yeah, there was me and like most of the friends that I grew up with at the time were white.
And how did you feel about it? Do you remember? Like having like more like mostly like white friends and.
I mean, when you're a kid, you don't think as much about it until you start like in school. They
Later in life,
yeah, you kind of do ask questions because I remember like if I think back, like in elementary school, you did things like your family tree project and you did things like your heritage or whatever, and like. So there were elements where I was starting to get curious, but more because I guess it was a product of like, this is a school project in a way. And so, this is like, we want to know your heritage, you present it to your class. So that's when I would start to ask those questions. But when you're a kid, it's so nice. Like kids don't really think about all of these, elements and layers to the world beyond.
It's just want to get along with the other kids, right?
You just want to make friends. You're not
play
really
with
thinking about it. Like maybe later in elementary school, like grade 4 or 5, when you're starting to do those types of projects, I think like that's when you start to really think about it. Yeah. And then I was kind of curious because I'd remember like even the shape of my eyes were like different from people that I grew up with. So I was starting to notice those things. I was like, I would remember asking my parents, like, why do my eyes have this like single lid?
Why am I different?
Why do they have a double lid? Like, I didn't even know what the difference was. Like, what is a single lid versus a double eyelid? Like, why is it like this? I was like, why don't my eyes open like a double lid?
Yeah.
It's just like little things like that, just curious questions as a kid. But
do you have any bad experience, like someone like making fun from your like something that your eyes or any physical,
maybe the odd time here or there about the eyes, but it wasn't anything where I took it that it didn't happen often. I went to a really good school, I have to say, where it didn't really happen like that often, and bullying wasn't really a thing. Like I actually had a really good group of classmates growing up. So there was nothing really like traumatic that affected me where it was like, I still remember this one incident with this kid on the playground at any one given time. No. But there are things that I remember, like I used to dance competitively as well growing up. And so when you dance competitively, you're put in costumes and you have to get your hair and makeup done. And like your mom, I guess, is doing your makeup at that age because you don't really know how to do it. So... but I remember they'd have specific things they'd want you to do with your makeup. And one of those was like eyeliner. And so eyeliner on a single lid is different than if you were to do it on a double eyelid. And so little things like that, it was kind of like tough for them to figure out how they were going to do my makeup because it was different from everybody else because my whole dance community was white as well for the most part. Or if they weren't white, they still had the double eyelid, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So little things like that were starting to, like, they didn't bother me as much. It's more like I don't know. I grew up in such a white community that it was just thought of as just being a little bit different, but it wasn't like taken as a way that it was like I was being bullied. So it was interesting. But now that all of like conversations more now like this are coming up, now I'm like in some ways going back and thinking about things, and I'm like, you know, there are times when I did feel X or felt, you know, a certain way, but I didn't necessarily know how to articulate it because you weren't having these conversations. So you're feeling certain things, but you don't necessarily know how. But as a kid, didn't really start to really, I didn't think about
You're not actually aware of it, right?
No.
Things are happening, you're just reacting to them. And
yeah. Not putting too much thought into it. I really only started to notice things more as I get older. Yeah. When you're more aware and you can start to...
And you also don't talk about that with your parents, and they don't talk about that with you. So it's...
Not at all. Yeah. No, it's kind of just
for
like...
For some reason, you don't want to...
where we live. This is... how...
disclose that, or, okay, I was at school today and something happened, and I felt this way or that way. You don't actually, you know...
No. And...
you don't know how to express yourself.
You really don't know how to express yourself. And to be honest, I probably had it the best. Like, if you compare it to, like, my parents and their generation growing up, because it was probably even less diverse when they were growing up in Vancouver, going to elementary and high school here. So they probably had, like, more targeted elements of bullying and discrimination when they're growing up. So for me, with some of the stuff, like... I guess there were more microaggressions, but they didn't even feel that aggressive at the time because, again, you're just a kid and there's no real intention or negative intention behind anything. That, you know, if they were to hear that, that would probably maybe to my parents feel like nothing because they would have experienced something maybe so much worse going back to when they were a kid, because it got progressively less progressive as you go back in time. So I'm sure they probably think of it as... not as big of a deal what I went through as opposed to what they went through anyways. Speculating, I guess.
Yeah. When you say that, I'm gonna say that again because I have, my name is Fabio, which is not even Brazilian. It's not even a Brazilian name. It's originally from Italy, right? It's an Italian name. And I have Ishikawa, which is my last name. And I do have a Japanese middle name. It's Yugo. Yeah. And I always tell this story because I think it's interesting because I didn't like it, right? I didn't like it because I remember that I just wanted to be part of that white bubble because 90% of my friends, they were white. And having like a different name, like a Japanese middle name, it was something that I remember, like, I would even, like, to the point that I was actually saying to my parents, like, I don't like my name. Why did you choose that?
Yeah.
And I like to tell this story because last episode, I had a huge bandage on my arm because I just got the, this is my new tattoo,
it looks good. It does look fresh.
Let me try to show that so people can see it. And that was a way for me to, this is my Japanese name. And there's this Japanese artist, and her name is Kishu. Shout out to Kishu. And the tattoo artist, she's also Japanese. Shoko, shout out to Shoko. So know that? Yeah, they're both great artists. And I wanted to somehow redesign my Japanese name and have it on my body because that's the way it's a kind of a healing process, you know, because now I see it and it reflects the moment that the changes, the recent changes, when, you know, especially when I moved from Brazil to Canada, and now I see it every single day, and I see the beauty of it. So I like to talk about it because you know, I spent most of my life not liking it and refusing it, right? Even like if I see my signatures and you know, filling up like a form, I wouldn't write it down. Like it's just Fabio and Ishikawa. So this is a big thing for me because and again, as you said, when you're young or when you're a kid, you don't realize you just do things without knowing that you're doing that. I kind of like, I remember I didn't like it, but I didn't know why I didn't like it. I was just, refusing it and saying that to my parents, like I don't like my name. And now I kind of realize that, why I didn't like it. And then I started, thinking about it. So
but as you got older, right? Not when you're like a kid.
Exactly, right?
When
do you remember any situations that you actually amazing, I'm different, and maybe there's something that actually bothers me because I'm different?
When I went to university, probably. So growing up, like I went to a private Catholic elementary school, and then I went to the only other private Catholic high school that was in North Van at the time. So you pretty much grow up with the same people up until you graduate high school, for the most part. Some change a little bit, but you are with pretty much the same people. So you're in this bubble for majority of your childhood, from the age of 5 all the way up to 17, 18, whenever you graduate, depending on when you're born, I guess. So for me, living in this bubble, like I'd known these people forever. I'd grown up with them. So I wasn't seen as like, I don't know, different or Asian for the most part. Like I was just kind of their friend kind of a thing. So I, again, didn't really even in high school think about it too much. There were more Asian kids though in my high school. So I wasn't then the only one. But again, still wasn't something that it was like you thought about. And then when I went to UBC, that's when I started to notice, because A, UBC is way more multicultural as a whole, but B, there's way more Asian people who go to the school as students in all faculties. So, and you were in big lecture halls. Like my school was very small. Like my high school, I think total were 500 people, and my graduating class, I think, was 120. So going to UBC was great. Like it was so fun. I felt like a kid in a candy store. It was like, oh, there's all these different cultures and there's all these different people. I get to make new friends, get out of this bubble that I've been living in for so long. But sometimes in classes when you have to partner up on projects, like you'd see people gravitating towards other people who they thought maybe spoke English, and like they wouldn't necessarily want to partner with some of the Asian students in the class. Like maybe like the groups of white people would partner together, and then the Asians would partner together. And people would always ask me, like, kind of when you're introducing yourself, like, where are you from? Like where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, I'm from here. And they're like, no, but where are you really from? Like, I hate that question, actually, that when people ask me was really
So that was the first time you got that question.
I probably I've got that before, but when I went down to, like, the States or for, like, a trip or something. Like, if I went to the U.S., I got questions like that, but I just honestly kind of chalked it up to being in the U.S. So I didn't put much thought into it. I was just like, oh, well, I'm in the U.S., so
whatever.
Whatever. Like, I'm sure like this for most different ethnicities other than white people in the U.S. So you kind of just chalked it up to being in the U.S. So it wasn't the first time, but I think it was the first time here where that was starting to become more apparent. And I was like, no, I'm from here. And they'd be like, but where are you like from? And I'm like, no, I'm still from here. And then I'd be like, okay, so like, we really want to get into it. Like, I was born here, my parents born here, my grandparents born here, like 4th generation Canadian. And then you have to go into the whole spiel because they keep asking, like, where are you from? It doesn't just stop. They're like confused. They're like,
I still don't get it.
Yeah, I guess there's probably not, to be fair, maybe a lot of 4th generation anything in Canada or in Vancouver anymore, at least. So maybe that was confusing to them. I don't know. But I started to notice it almost like reverse. Like it was more of the fact that I was viewed outwardly as Asian to people who I didn't know. Whereas like when growing up in this bubble, like I was never viewed that way because I had grown up with them. And we started as kids. And again, as kids, you're not thinking about race, whatever. And then as you grow up, you're still not thinking about it because you've known them since you were 5. So they're just more of a familiar person to you. So being in that bubble, when I came out of that bubble, I was like, oh.
You don't expect that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's almost like, I don't know how to describe it. It was just a weird feeling because people were like viewing me as being Asian, assuming that I was born outside of Canada and having immigrated here recently. Our parents just immigrated and I must speak some other language and whichever. And that wasn't the case. So I felt like an anomaly in that way because I had roots so rooted here, but outwardly viewed, it doesn't obviously appear that way to people as a first option because it's probably a smaller subset of people, I guess. So I started to encounter that more in university. And so I found that to be a bit of an uphill battle. But I did like meeting, like most of my friends now are from so many different places in the world, which is great. And it did give me the chance to meet people from all these different cultures and ethnicities. Really and it really gave me exposure and it gave me awareness and knowledge. And, because I don't want to be ignorant and I want to be aware of other people's cultures, traditions, where they're from, and just take it for what it is as information, as opposed to then making assumptions or asking follow-up questions like, no, but where are you really from? Like, I think if somebody answers, I just go, cool. Rather, you just take it at face value. You don't keep prodding and prodding and prodding.
How did you feel like making more or having more Asian friends? Because that was pretty much the first time that you have a larger group of Asian friends.
Yeah. It was interesting. I think it was different for me. Like in high school, I had groups of friends who were Asian as well, but they weren't like we all kind of blended together. Because in high school, again, it was kind of just like the pool was small of people that you could be friends with. It was 120 class, and so like you kind of all a lot of us still talk from high school. So going into university where there are people that maybe just moved here from a different country or, maybe are first generation and have come from different backgrounds. It was cool to hear different people's, I guess, perspectives. And where they're from. And in chatting to them about different places. A lot of people had moved from one place to another and had hopped all over the world. So it was interesting to hear as well from their perspective, even though outwardly as well, they appear to be Asian. They might have grown up in Italy for part of their life or here, and maybe they actually also speak 3 more languages. These are things like outwardly at first glance, you wouldn't assume about them. But I think it was great in teaching not to assume things about people because there's so many places that people came from when they went to UBC that it was such a great plethora of information and learning about different people and cultures and options, I think, for people to be able to travel and go and move to. So it was really nice to see. I found it to be a breath of fresh air as opposed to being stifling. Like if I look back now, I did feel like I lived in a fishbowl, in a bubble.
Yeah.
And I think it was nice being able to break that open when I went to university.
When you first got that question, where you're from, do you remember if that actually affected your self-esteem or did you feel bad afterwards? You remember that?
Yeah, I did. It didn't affect my self-esteem, but it did just make me frustrated. Like I remember feeling...
How come the person that...
It's like, I already answered the question. Like, why do you keep asking the same question? Like, why can't you just take my answer at face value? Like, why are you continuing to prod? Because then I would always, like, let out that exasperated sigh and be like, okay, well, back in 1920, when my great-grandparents immigrated, or whatever, like, you have to almost feel like you have to go all the way back because they're not stopping to ask that same question. So it was more a feeling of, like, exasperation and frustration that they weren't listening to me. Like I didn't feel heard.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I remember some of my friends making fun, like, your eyes are not open. Like why are you still, like
Yeah.
I remember that, and I was so angry, like inside. I remember I didn't want to say something about it. Like I just just laugh, pretend that's nothing.
Yeah.
Right, and you can internalize it, but you don't know what.
Yeah, you can't articulate it.
No, you cannot. You cannot. Or you actually don't want to, right?
Yeah, it's repression.
So maybe they're your friends and you want to, just keep it like,
light and fun
and that's
disturb the peace.
Just another joke, right?
Yeah.
Wanted to ask about your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like growing up in an Asian household, but they are the third generation, so.
Yeah, it was more westernized.
So did you speak the language, or it's Cantonese, right? The main
Cantonese, yeah. Well, no, because my dad doesn't speak it, but my mom does. So, like, growing up, my mom didn't really have anyone to speak to practice it.
Then how come your dad, he didn't speak the language?
Because his parents were born here as well. So he's like 2 generations removed from it. Whereas my mom's parents were born in Hong Kong and moved over. So she did grow up speaking it, whereas my dad did not, because his parents also were born here in Vancouver. So because of that, they grew up speaking English as well. So in my family, we would speak English. Like if we went to Chinese restaurants, like going back to dim sum and the food, that would be the time where you would hear Cantonese, because that was the one time where food would bring it all kind of together. And so, really the only words that I know now are tied to food.
Have you ever asked your parents why your mom, she didn't teach you some of the language, but the basic stuff? They probably know some few words, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, so. I know some phrases and words like hi and how are you, and
have you ever asked them how come you didn't teach me that, your language? Cantonese.
I don't know if I asked my mom. I think it was more like I didn't at the time want to. I remember because my mom's parents only speak Cantonese, so I couldn't even really communicate with them growing up, because my mom would have to translate, or her siblings if I was visiting them. How they got by living here only speaking Cantonese and no English is amazing to me, because they've lived here for so long and they do not speak English. They understand English, I think, if I speak to them, but they don't ever speak English back to me, except if you say my name. But so whenever I would go over, they would be speaking Cantonese, and then I would be looking at my mom being like, what did they say? And then she would tell me, and then I'd be like, okay, here. And a lot of the times my grandparents, my mom's side, so they're called like Gung and Papua. Gung is grandpa and Papua is grandma. So they would always, or my Papua always wanted me to go to Chinese school to learn. But that would have been like a whole Saturday, like in school, as well as having been at school before. And I just remember being like, I don't want to.
I don't want to go.
No, I had extracurriculars where I was doing dance competitively. I was like, I don't want to do that. But also, all of my friends were white at the time too, and I remember just being like, oh, this is going to be horrible for me. Like, I can't.
You feel that like you don't need to, right?
Yeah, I was like, socially too, this is probably going to be like bad for me. But I was like, yeah, I don't really feel like I need to. I don't want to. Now, fast forward to now when, it's great. I should have learned another language. How useful would that have been? And now I tried learning other languages and I don't have an ear for it, so probably should have when I was younger, but here we are. But yeah, that was the time. It was a bit of a stigma, I think, in my own head because of the community I grew up in. Again, nobody was making fun of me. Nobody was putting the stigma on me. It was in internal stigma.
Internal, yeah.
And so it was me advocating against going to formal school for it. And yeah, my mom was probably like, oh, well, if she's not going to apply to learn anyways, then why would I try and teach her at home, I think, kind of a thing. It's probably tough for parents too. I'm thinking about back when they're working full time and they're coming home, the last thing I want to do is force their kid who doesn't really want to learn to sit down and learn Cantonese. It's probably more of a
Yeah, and also I think they want to make sure that their children they speak like a perfect English, right?
Yeah. They were worried about job opportunities as well.
Education.
And they wanted us to be able to communicate well, but in English, because that's the language where, you could get those job opportunities. They're thinking, obviously, when I'm in elementary school, way down the line, like they're thinking that's, it's going to be. Although now, again, multiple languages kind of gives you a leg up. But at the time, that was kind of the way it was. And that was the thinking, I think, as well. Like, I had to participate in speech arts in elementary school, which was like you would have to pick a poem from, I don't know, a poetry book or something. And then you'd have to memorize it. And then you'd stand on the stage and recite this poem. And they grade you on like pronunciation, cadence, like if you memorized it at all, like how well you said it, how clearly you enunciated. Those were things that they would grade you on, and then you would get like a certificate of gold, silver, or bronze at the end. So those are the types of things that we had to do in school, and that was very English-centered, obviously. So I think for them, they were okay with it because they thought that it was going to further my communication skills in ways that might actually help me getting a job later down the line.
Did like their parents put pressure on you, like to get high grades or something? Like how was their like the parenting style? Like
there's Asian influence. Like they definitely wanted us to have good grades.
Like I should putting pressure on you, or like they were more like relaxed.
I wouldn't say they were relaxed, but like I don't think it was as strict as like a super traditional Chinese household could be. So maybe in between. I wouldn't say they're relaxed, but I wouldn't say they were like strict either. I do remember having like the willingness to always do my homework. Like my mom didn't have to chase me to do homework. Like I would kind of just take the initiative to do it. If I had something to do and I had a deadline, like I would always work to do it. They never had to chase me to do homework, which was nice. But I think as time grew on, like I'm terrible with math and science. Like I, so many times, like in high school, almost failed math. So many times. And I think they could see, like in those instances, this is where maybe the pressure wasn't there, because they could see in those instances that it's not like it was a lack of trying and it was laziness. Like I really just didn't understand the math problem. And I got by in math up until that point because I would have a really good memory. So I would memorize the exact way the teacher would do it, and then I would copy paste that to all the other questions that were similar. And for the most part, it worked. And then the times it didn't work, I didn't understand why, but like I passed, so I didn't care. So for math, like I was terrible at that. And like I think they were probably concerned at the beginning, like they did try to put me in Kumon, and I just didn't take to it, so they kind of gave up. And then they realized that I was just, and then they realized I was just bad at math. Like it's just like an actual lack of understanding. And my aunt...
I hated it.
You hated it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated it. / I also was just bad at math. Like it was a waste because I didn't understand it. It didn't help me. It wasn't that I needed more practice. It wasn't that I wasn't trying. I just don't understand the problem. And so therefore I don't know how to answer the problem. And I can copy paste, but I don't understand what I'm copy pasting. Like, so it was never computing. And my aunt is a teacher, and she has gotten so many degrees. Like she was a teacher at the time, and she would do one-on-one sessions with me, and like the questions I'd be asking her, she'd be like, to my dad, like she'd be like, she really just doesn't understand. Like she just like, we're not gonna get this because she doesn't understand it. So I think at that point they were kind of just like, all right, just do whatever you can, just pass. Like
just pass, yeah.
Just try passing. And then so that was okay. They did put me in summer school in grade 12 though. No, grade 11 going into grade 12, because they wanted me to do math 12 early in the event that I got a bad grade, to then I could retake it throughout grade 12 in high school, because they wanted to give me more options in the hopes that I could get into programs other than arts, I think, which is the faculty I ended up in. I think they wanted me, because you needed math to get into business. They knew I wasn't going to be in sciences, but they were like, oh, math would be good if you wanted to get into business. And I almost failed math 12. So they were like, let's just give up. You're going to be in arts. It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's pressure at the beginning. And then when they realize that it's not that you're not trying, you actually don't understand, then the pressure starts to subside. I think my sister is a lot more book smart than me, who's younger. And so she probably puts more pressure on herself than I do in anything. And therefore, I think also because my sister was good at everything in school, that my parents would maybe put more pressure on her without knowing, or she at least took it as. But that was because they saw that she was good at it all. So they were like, okay, you can do it. You can do it. Whereas with me, they were like, oh, you can't do it.
Maybe she
yeah,
maybe
you can't do it. So it's fine. Which honestly I was fine with because there's less pressure on me. But yeah, she was good at everything. Like when I was in grade 12, she was in grade 8. She used to like do some of my math questions for me, and I got her to do some.
She's younger.
Yeah, she's younger. She was like 13 and I was like 17, and I was like, I don't get this. And she's like, oh, I can figure it out. And I was like, great. And then I would get her to do some of my math homework. Don't tell my teachers. Like, I did graduate on my own merit, but yeah, she did do some of my math homework.
You know what's funny? I have a younger sister as well, and she was the good student and was the bad student. I think that's why my mom, she wanted me do Kumon. And then you know what's
did it help
funnier?
you?
Like, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah.
No, it didn't help a lot. No, it didn't work out. Now what's funny? Now I'm been sending my son now to Kumon.
Oh,
and it's actually working out. He's doing really well. Yeah.
Oh.
He's 10 years old.
Okay. So is it that he needs the repetition, or is it
he needs the repetition? Yeah.
Oh, so he just needs more practice.
Yeah.
But it's not a fundamental lack of understanding like me.
Well, I don't know. Like the thing is, we got here 4 years ago, and then my children they didn't know, like they had like zero English, right? Mm-hmm. So they probably still have a gap,
okay,
right? Because of the language barrier. They know that their English is better than mine, even though, but the academic skills, I think they still have to work on it.
Yeah.
And that's why, we decided to send my son. But it's funny because I didn't like it, and now I'm sending my son, right?
It's funny how that happens, I guess. Like, you do it in the best interest to try to help your kids, I'm sure. But yeah, I think for me it was, I just didn't get it.
No, now I get it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a parent.
But it's hard for you to understand.
But did you compare yourself to your sister Ed?
I wished I was better naturally at school, like she was. Like, I wished I was able to understand, like, math problems like she could kind of just look at something and figure it out. Whereas I had no idea what it was even saying. So, yeah, I mean, growing up, I was definitely envious of how much better in school she was. But otherwise, no, I was kind of just a little bit more carefree than she was, a little bit.
Because I remember, like, looking at my sister grades, like she was like a kind of a role model for being like, just like I wanted to be like her, but I couldn't.
Right.
And but I think it was more about, she was like looking at her like being successful, having like getting like high grades. It was like a mirror, like seeing myself like a lot. Oh no, I can see how bad I am.
Oh no.
But but I think that was more positive than negative. Like I really admire my sister. Like she's the best. That's one thing I want to ask you is, now that getting older, like, what comes to mind when you think about your background or family heritage? What comes to mind?
What comes to mind? History. I think there's a lot of history there. I'm so far removed from a lot of it that it's hard to even think about because we came, I think, in railroad times even. I think it was like there's a new actually museum. We just talked about this actually because there's a new museum or a new wing at least of the museum that opened up in Chinatown here. And my grandma wanted to see it on my dad's side because she was like, oh, we've been here so long. Maybe we're in there. So my parents took her on a little tour of this museum to like see some of the old newspaper clippings and like some of the pieces that were there to see if there was any like familial ties to it. And from what I understand, she didn't see any of our family specifically in it, but she saw a lot of our family's friends in various photographs in the museum. So yeah, so knew or heard of some of those people because they would have been her parents' age and friends. So yeah, that was interesting to see that there's ties way back in to Vancouver, that there's people we know in the museum, which is interesting because Vancouver is not, I guess, that old of a city. So even something where you're like having roots to a city that's centered here as more of like a monumental museum type thing is interesting to hear about, because it's one of those things where, yeah, not a lot of people can maybe say that they've been here since that time or have family roots that have been here since that time. So, yeah, I definitely feel proud that I can say that there's an element of, you know, the heritage that's so rooted here, because a lot of people can't see that. So I think that was cool, and that came up kind of recently in the past.
It is recent, right?
Few months, yeah. So that was something that kind of made me think about it kind of again when we were talking about that museum. But yeah, it was interesting to hear about from my grandma's perspective too.
Do you feel like how do you like identify yourself? Because you don't speak the language, but still have some connection.
Yeah.
Right? How do you identify yourself? Like
an anomaly. An anomaly. I mean, that's how I kind of felt growing up, all the way throughout like from, elementary school all the way through university. I felt like an anomaly because of that reason, because it's felt so far removed from the overall heritage, and so rooted to just Vancouver as a whole. And there's elements of the heritage that have been sprinkled throughout my life and my childhood for sure. But I don't know. I guess I identify as a bit of an anomaly. Like I'm trying now to, I guess learn more about heritage and think more about the instances in my life, like some of those ones in university that have kind of shaped thought processes in my life and how I think about things. And I do try and actively now look back at instances and I'm like, like, did I just brush that under the rug? Like, was that a microaggression? Was that racism? Like, should I have, I don't know, should I have been more offended, or should I have just dealt with it the way that I dealt with it? Like, these are things that now I do think about more often. But as terms of an identity, it's hard to say one or another. Like, I do feel like a bit of a, path that's split into two diverging roads. Like, that was kind of like when I was growing up, I felt like I had to pick one or kind of the other to identify with.
Is that the picture that you brought?
It's a bit of a dichotomy. Yeah. Like, it did feel like, I don't know if you can see
I'll make sure then everyone's gonna see that.
Yeah, it's basically like two roads diverging into separate
places. And different ways.
Yeah, and growing up, I did feel like I had to pick one or the other, and I picked the one where I was going to be most accepted at the time. So now I think more
you should explore
ethnicities and cultures are celebrated. Yeah. like, yeah, I mean, on that trip to Singapore I just came back from, I mean, there's a lot of Chinese influences there. And so with a lot of the food, I was ordering food that I wouldn't normally eat here or, as often, because it's one of those things. And then some of the Cantonese words of some of the foods were coming back to me at the time. But yeah, I was more like trying to immerse yourself into some of those elements again, I think, and learning more about it. Maybe not as much about maybe my specific heritage, it's so far removed, like my family's history, I mean, but I think more about the culture as a whole, I think, is good to know.
And you said that your fiancé he's not Asian, right?
No, he's from Kenya. Yeah. So
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I know.
That combination, you and him,
that has been interesting.
I've seen some photos and
yeah.
You're a great couple.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, to be honest, I find it so it's interesting. You have that mix of different cultures, right?
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. Because growing up, I mean, everybody I knew, we have been together since early days of university. So, he was at the time, I guess, so far out of what I knew, I guess, my comfort zone, because everybody I grew up with was basically white, and then some more Asians in high school. But yeah, there was nobody from like Kenya who I grew up
and he's
with.
an immigrant like myself, right?
Yeah, he moved here in 2010 to go to university. So he moved here for UBC. And so that's when we met. But yeah, his roots are, from Kenya. So his first language was Swahili. So very different, I know. But yeah, so he grew up being bilingual, learning Swahili and English. So.
And how was your parents' reaction when they first met your fiancé?
Yeah, they were...
Was that a concern, like even before?
No, I mean, they were never the type that was like, oh, you should marry an Asian. Like, they were never that type of... They were never those parents, which was nice. They were probably a bit surprised at how different I went, though, outside of that. Like, they probably assumed that I would have ended up with a white guy. If it wasn't an Asian guy, they're probably like, oh, it's probably going to be a white guy, because that's what you knew and grew up with.
First option, right? Asian. Second, maybe a white guy.
Or maybe not first Asian, second white guy. Maybe it would have been like the same. Like maybe it would have been both of them could have been a first option, I think, in their minds as to what they thought. And then they met my fiance, and it was not probably what they thought. And like we knew nothing about Kenya. Like nobody had ever been there, and Swahili, like you only hear about that in The Lion King. Like these were some of the things, that were probably running through their mind. So very far out of everybody's wheelhouse. So I think they were, they were fine. They weren't weird about it. They were fine. They were really good, actually. But I think probably in their minds they were maybe surprised, because it was just out of what I grew up with. And it's like, how did you meet? How did you get together and find it? Like, there's like growing up in your friend group, you didn't even have any friends that were from there, but not because I avoided it. It's just that there was just nobody from there around. So
you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
Having this, parents that are not actually have that kind of expectations, right?
I think it's because they are born here, and parents, being fourth generation Canadian, I think they have that, like, again, there is that dichotomy, like they do have that westernized approach with things like that, but then they are also like, oh, but you should get good grades in school, and, it'd be great if you were a lawyer, which my sister is now, funny enough. But you know what I mean? So there's like flickers of here, and then there's like flickers of this. So yeah, at least with the relationship side, they were cool with it.
So you guys are getting married, like in the future?
Yeah.
Near future, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do, honestly. We haven't even thought about it. It's so funny because we've been together for so long that, like, I don't know, the idea of a big wedding and a whole spectacle of it.
You're already living together.
Right. There's nothing we're just kind of like over that hump of this big grand thing, like, because it's been so long. I think we're just happy to live our lives and be together and do something on our own time. It might be spur of the moment on a whim, kind of elope thing. Who knows? I don't know. Honestly haven't put any thought into it. We don't know. But yeah, it's not a question of if we're going to be together forever. It's more just like we're going to be together forever. So, you know.
Yeah, it's just a piece of paper.
Big deal. Yeah. That's more of the.
But I have to ask you that, like, have any plans for like having kids in the future, or this is not even?
Yeah, no, I don't think we want kids. It's not that we don't like kids. Like we like kids. We're fine with kids. I think, for us and like our lifestyle, I think we want to be able to kind of just pick up and go, and not be rooted to one specific place. I think too, with a lot of our family and friends as well being kind of all over the world, rooting in one place, like I know my parents have and generations before, and settling down into this one specific place forever is, I think, more of a jarring idea to me. Like, I think growing up in that bubble as well, when I was a kid, all the way up until university, I think I kind of reject the idea of that suburban, you settle and you grow up in one place and you live there forever kind of lifestyle, like how it was in previous generations. So especially with where he's from and moving here, and I think our want to travel, and now that we started this business, I just think that it's not going to be something where it's going to fit into our lifestyle. Again, nothing to do with not having kids or not. And I know this is another thing that kills me. People are always like, oh, you're so young, you have so much time. It's not about time. It's more about like, this is just not going to work with what we have planned. Like, we have a dog and we love our dog so much, like she's our child, which I think nowadays is a lot of people with their dogs. And like, that's enough responsibility.
No, don't get me wrong. The reason I'm asking it, because if you can picture that, having kids, what would be the question is actually what would be the values or culture, any traditions that you would pass on to your kids?
I would, okay, let's say hypothetically, we're going to do this.
Even though it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But I would say I would want them to be educated on different cultures, for sure. So, like, he grew up in Kenya, so there's elements of that culture, but, like, his family has roots in the UK, India, and Pakistan. So there's elements of those cultures in his background as well, and different traditions, the way they do things. Obviously, there's a North American culture aspect to it now, and then there would be elements of Chinese and Asian influence, probably in food. It's funny, fiance doesn't
bit of
like
both,
Asian
yeah.
Food, but yeah, so a little bit of a mix. But I think the biggest thing is more about making sure they're educated. I wouldn't want them to grow up in as much of a bubble as I did. Like, don't get me wrong, it's really good to protect your kids, and I think it's easy to put your kids in a bubble because it's easier for the parents. Like, there's less to worry about. You know what I mean? Like,
it's more convenient.
You're sheltered. Safer, which is obviously top priority for any parent, is safety. But I think now, with the way the world is and the way things are going, I think knowledge and awareness of different cultures and how people do things is key. Like, when Christmas rolls around, if I were to have kids, like, I would let them know, like, hey, Christmas is, what we celebrate here, but not every culture actually celebrates Christmas. Like, yes, it's a day off for everyone here and us, but that's not what the world is centered around in terms of a time of year and religion. So, like, throwing that in there as well and giving them that, hey, on the other side, just so you're aware, this isn't always what it is. Like, telling them about different, other cultures that people celebrate, like, it's funny, we have a friend who doesn't eat pork because that's part of her culture. But in Chinese culture, like, pork is so huge. So, again, one of those things where some people don't eat pork because that's, part of their religion or culture or traditions. But in Chinese culture and heritage, pork is celebrated. Like you're doing pork roast before you're doing weddings. Like there's a whole, or pig roast. So there's a whole element in and around pigs in Chinese culture. Whereas in other cultures, like you would just never even eat pork. So those kind of different elements, I think I would want other people to know and be aware of. So I'd want to make sure that there's as much education around the world isn't centered around North America as possible. I think. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I got one last question, which is checking on your social media.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one specific photo that I think it's really special for you. I just want to, when you confirm that,
Okay.
if it one of the highest points of your life, that picture of your graduation at UBC with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
What was the feeling? While you remember
Yeah.
what was the feeling? What were you feeling on that day?
Yeah, definitely happiness, excitement, honestly relief that I would never have to study again. Because the longer I was in school, the longer I was like, oh, when is this going to end? Not because I didn't love my experience at UBC. I did. I think I was just tired of studying, to be honest. So there's definitely that element of relief. But I did feel like it was a nice way to close a chapter in my life because it was a great chapter in my life. Still to this day, one of the highlights of my life. Like those 4 or 5-ish years were like some of the greatest memories. And a lot of people I met are still really good friends. I'm still really good friends with today. Like that part of my life, I feel like really shaped a lot of more of who I am today, as opposed to, more of my childhood. In the way I think about things, in the way I look at life, I think that was such an important and prominent part of my life that it was a celebration of a lot of things, not just getting my degree and being relieved at the fact that I didn't have to study ever again, hopefully. But it was also more of, a really nice, like rounding out of closing a really good chapter in my life and being able to then use that as a springboard to start a new chapter of my life.
I was feeling like making your parents proud of you. Like, that was that was the perfect closing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what your parents being there and celebrating that with you? Like,
yeah, I do. There was like my parents were there, my sister, my aunt was there, my fiance, who was boyfriend at the time, was there, and a lot of friends came as well. It was like a great moment to celebrate, I think, with everyone. I think they were also looking at it as like, oh, the end of an era. The end of a chapter. It's so nice to see her now closing the chapter of childhood to now be an adult, kind of standing on your own 2 feet. So I think for them that was the sentiment of, oh, this is really nice.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
Looking at that picture. All right. So I guess this is it. I actually have, again, I got something for it. It's a small gift, and I want you to open that
Now?
and I'll explain what's the meaning of that
It's so nicely wrapped. I don't really want to.
little gift. I know I don't want to mess up, but you have to.
Yeah. Did you do this yourself? Like the
No,
wrapping?
it wasn't me. No.
Oh, I was like, this is impressive. You have another career in arts and crafts.
No, I don't have those skills.
Okay.
So this is no worries. Yeah, go for it.
I know. I'm trying to do it so nicely. I'm just gonna.
I know, right?
We're gonna be here forever.
So this is a traditional Japanese chime, wind chime, actually, right? That was originally created. It's mainly used in the summer, if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, someone is gonna comment on this. And that's normally used in the summer.
Yeah.
And it was originally made to avoid the evil, like bad things.
Oh.
And those chimes they're all handmade chimes, and each of them like they make like a different sound. Yeah, and just gotta tie this piece of paper. Yeah,
To the bottom.
to the bottom. You can do it afterwards. You don't have to do it now.
It's a really nice sound.
So they make that that unique sound, and I just want to say thank you because it was a great opportunity to I feel really grateful for being here and being able to listen to your experiences and stories. Yeah, I just want to say that they're all unique, just like the conversation we just had. So I want you to, if you want to hang it or use it or give it away, just whenever you hear that sound, I want you to remember that conversation. So
Oh, thank you. No, I'm definitely going to keep it.
Hope
I'm
you
not
like
going to
it.
give it away. I love it.
hope you like it.
It's a very pretty sound. What does this mean? Do you know?
I guess this it's saying like Japanese, like wind chime, if I'm not wrong again. Yeah.
Nice.
Hope someone can help me with that. Like I think it's
We need your tattoo artist.
it's saying Japanese wind chime.
Okay.
But anyways, I'll double check.
All right, cool. Thank you.